I felt like I didn't belong until I found my inner truth. Hi, I'm May, and I'm the host of this weekly podcast. And I want to take you on a journey to look at the challenges, but also the benefits of being a multicultural person. And also, of course, embrace a global spirituality to find love, acceptance, inner truth, and belonging. And if you like the podcast and the idea of creating this global community of multicultural people, please spread the word. Follow my podcast, like it so that we can bring this closer to other people as well. If you have multicultural friends, call them in, bring them in together, and let's share this. So let's just dive right in, and welcome to today's episode. Servus and welcome to today's episode. I'm glad you're tuning in again. And today I want to talk to you about how I needed to go deep into deep hole and actually become sick before I could finally release all the things that were holding me back, and then actually for the first time in my life starting to find out who I am and what brought me on my path, and also what brought me on this path here that I want to share with you in this podcast. So it's going to be a big part of everything. I always like to lead by example, so I want to start by telling you my story, who I am and what has happened throughout my life. So I was, like I already told you in the first episode, I was born to a very good family. My parents are, for me, really amazing people. My mom's Chinese Ecuadorian, my dad's German, have always had this thing of wanting to help. My father used to work, it's so funny, I'm going to say it in German because I feel that's like the best name. It's called Entwicklungshilfe, what he used to do. And Entwicklungshilfe, I think, is something similar to the Peace Corps, to what the U.S. does with the Peace Corps, if that says anything. Basically, it's he started off in an NGO that was looking for engineers, or not just engineers, but in my dad's case, he was a mechanic, but not just a mechanic, he was a teacher for mechanics. And so they wanted to bring him in to teach the people back then in the 70s, to teach people in Ecuador how to repair their cars a little bit more efficient and things like that. So so that's how what he had and still has. He's retired, but he has found his ways to try to do good. I mean, after that project, his other projects were a little bit different, but they always had to do with teaching people something about cars and how to deal with them in a better way. And my mother started off as an MTA, medical technical assistant, and then, well, when my sister and I came along, she decided to be a stay-at-home mom. But being a stay-at-home mom and having that social way of doing things, she really did, when she could, started to do charity work, and if possible, at some points, even volunteer herself for different projects. And also she's still doing it. She's still, whenever she can, she tries to give back to the community. So that's the loving family I was brought up with, and I'm really grateful for that, because they gave me that spark of wanting to help, wanting to make something, to be there, to be a support for the community. And I just wanted to share this with you because I really come from a very good and supportive family system, except that apparently myself, I decided to do it a little bit harder because I decided to fit in. And I'm not saying that, I mean, having parents like that, of course, they taught us to fit in, to, you know, to be flexible, to support whatever cultures we would go to, which was amazing. And I really love that because it gave my sister and I a really good base to be able to be compassionate, to be able to really, you know, understand everybody the way they are, whatever that way was or wasn't. The only thing is that when I finished high school and started my life on my own 2 feet, you know, like leaving my parents' house, my idea was similar, you know, like to go study something and then go and conquer the world and become something like that as well, you know, like my dad or like my mom, do something good in this world. But somehow, and I would always say that we're always taken to the spots in life where we're supposed to go. And I think that I was trying so hard to fit in that instead of looking towards my parents to the to what they had showed me and how they had been, I started to look at the people in Germany, because in my case it was I had returned to Germany to, you know, because that's where you go and study, because that way you get a good base and then you can just go and conquer the world, right? But somehow I tried to fit in there. Maybe something in my subconscious wanted to stay first. And I'm grateful I did. And I'm grateful that I had this experience of, instead of starting to travel, staying there and really trying to fit in. You know, trying to have a normal job, normal friends, normal colleagues. You know, you try to get better every year. Once your job is not that good anymore, you try to find something better. And, you know, this whole thing, until I realized at one point that I had changed jobs almost every second year. And I'm not saying just changing from company to company. I mean really changing jobs. I started as a gardener, then I started to work in a travel agency, then I started to work in a hotel, and then or hostel, and then I changed over to work in a big telecommunication company. And that's where it struck me, where I was like, oh man, something's wrong, you know, like you have to change something. You can't be changing everything every 2 years. You need to find your own focus. Somehow I didn't have a focus. So of course I turned to my spiritual path and started going on spiritual things. I learned, I had like a shamanic teacher and learned the basis of shamanism. Started to learn a lot about energy work, and even had a time where I was assisting a Santeria priest in Germany. And well, mainly helping with translations and, you know, accommodating and stuff like that. While I was still at that big corporate job at at a telecommunication company. The thing is that within that company, I had a chance to become the PA to the CEO of one of the, how do you call it, like smaller companies within that company. So, especially because of my Spanish knowledge. Again, what gave me that possibility was being able to adapt to any kind of type of person, and, you know, like the flexibility that was given to me, like probably a lot of you guys, of the multicultural people. And so I went on to do that. And again, I also needed that to, you know, like have that real life. And because I felt more and more I was getting myself under pressure and started feeling like I had to, you know, try to be good with my boss, with my colleagues, you know, like keep everything in line and everything perfect. And I started to feel anxious, and because I was taking more and more responsibility for how everybody was feeling in that company. And that's when my big crash happened. And I have to tell you, that was 2012, which is very meaningful to the Mayan calendar, most of you know, that was basically the year where I crashed. Like I really crashed into a depression that at first I thought it was because of too much work, but I felt weird because I didn't felt overload of work, but I felt like work was tense, making me tense all the time. And then finally, I learned from because it took me a while where I tried to do something against it myself, because back then I was learning to do shiatsu massage, and with the Asian philosophy, try to let go, try to accept things the way they are with the Zen philosophy. I love Zen philosophy. Because I think there were moments where I finally, accepted this, came into this acceptance of the moment and to just try to be in the moment. But it didn't help me with my spirituals. I mean, it didn't help me with the depression because I would still not feel comfortable in the whole field that I was. And then I changed jobs within the big company, to have less responsibilities for myself. And then what happens is that a couple of months into the new job, I started feeling the same depression again. So that was a sign for me to say, hey, come on, something's really wrong. And apparently it doesn't have to do with your spiritual side because everything seems to be right on that side. But apparently there's something with your cognitive side, with your thinking that you're doing that's not working properly. So I really did go into therapy, which wasn't easy because coming out of a culture, maybe some of you guys know, I feel that on one hand, the Latin American culture, but also the German culture, has not yet accepted therapy as much as, for example, the US culture has. And I'm not saying that in a bad way or anything. I'm just saying that I think that's also part of my, maybe a part of my Chinese heritage, because in that moment, the first thing that I felt was defeated. Like I had really not, like I had done everything wrong because now I even needed help from a therapist. But I still did it. I still went. And I'm grateful I did because I learned that actually doing that showed me that I was strong, and that it was okay for me to go and get help. And I'm also grateful for that therapist that I had, because on one hand, she explained to me I wasn't overloaded from work. Actually, it was a little worse, because it's not that I was overloaded. It was that I didn't have meaning in what I was doing. And of course, I started to realize, come on, I come from a very social family, with all that I told you about my dad and my mom. And of course, my sister was working for a company that was basically doing social work. And I was the only one that was in that normal corporate world. So, yeah, so I had to go and find my meaning. And the second big thing that I found out in therapy was that I didn't know who I was. And that part really hit me because I had to admit to myself that instead of embracing the treasures of my multicultural background, I felt that it was a burden. I felt that being Latina wasn't good, being German wasn't good, and being Chinese wasn't good. And but thankful, and I'm really grateful to this therapist that I had, because she made me realize that I actually had a huge treasure. And that was this treasure of all the different cultures. Like every single moment of my life, I can choose, I can decide on 3 different ways of reacting to a situation. And that was so amazing for myself to find out. And this is one of the reasons why, one of the burners, why I'm burning for this project, to bring multicultural people together, because I want to show all of us, we don't have to feel ashamed for any sides of us, And again, this is one of the things that I realized with this whole thing, because, you try to fit in with your family from one side, and you're not fully accepted by them. It's not that they're saying you're bad because of that, but you feel that there are little things where you just don't connect with them. And same thing happens on the other side of the family, because you try to connect with them, but there's always this other side inside of you that is a little bit different. And maybe if you are, maybe not by DNA, but maybe if you have been raised in different cultures, maybe you've had it. I mean, you come from one culture and maybe you're moved to a different place. How was that? How easy or hard was it to connect with the people in that new country or in that other country? And how did that affect you towards your own family? And how much did your family in that moment accept you? So you see, those things started to rise in myself. Those questions like, who am I? And I'm grateful for the spiritual background that I had already gathered by that time, and that had basically drawn me towards Hawaii. And I'm glad it did, because it came to this point now where I've been like this right now, where I'm here on Hawaii is the third time I'm in. I mean, it's the first time on Big Island, but it's the third time on Hawaii, because I was here 2 years ago, both of the times on Kauai Island, which I totally love. I can really recommend anybody any kind of the islands. I do recommend to you that you do that during spring or summertime, because they actually do have a winter, so you can actually really freeze on Hawaii as well, or not freeze, but it can get cold or cool. But yeah, so what I'm trying to tell you is that actually the Hawaiian philosophy, and I think why I was attracted to Hawaii itself, is because it's so multicultural. There's so many different things from so many different places, so many different cultures that have mixed together in this place. And then there's the Hawaiian philosophy. And I'm very grateful because I learned so many different aspects of the Hawaiian philosophy through teachers, teachings, and books before I came here. And this third time, maybe third time's a charm, I don't know, but this third time brought me to a real Hawaiian teacher who actually, she triggered or opened some windows for me or some doors for me. And I had a couple of enlightenments as to our spiritual beings and our way of creating our world on this planet. And I hope that I can use all this experience with, on one hand, my spiritual side, but on the other hand, also on a very, dry cognitive side. I wouldn't, maybe not dry. I want to leave that as neutral as possible, but side, as to give you insights on how I found a way back to myself, to empower myself. So like I told you, one of the things was with my therapist to embrace my heritage, really embrace my ancestors and embrace the gifts that they have given me. This whole treasure chest of things, of culture, but also, and tradition, but also, yeah, because I don't feel like it's holding me back. Because to me, I learned that, it's good to look back at my culture at the base that they created for me, but also allow myself to create something new, And I think that's one of the important things that I want to share with you in this podcast. So on one hand, it's this, that I actually had to go through a depression, I had to walk the like, not for real, but giving it the name, like as if I was walking the wrong way. I don't like that because, there is no path that is wrong. I think I needed to go through that because I needed to get a feeling of what it feels like to be maybe normal, to be maybe in this 9-to-5 life. To realize that I am different. My whole being is different. And the more I embraced the way I am and the way I was, the way my true self is, the way my heart is, the more I feel grounded within myself. I feel really like I have roots, like my roots have become stronger, but also like, like I found a place where I belong, like within myself. I feel like I can be wherever I want and I will be fine. the moment I stopped trying to belong into, for in my case, the German culture, because I was living in Germany, and stopped trying to belong to the Ecuadorian culture, because that was, my family is there as well, and just embrace my whole multicultural being on one hand, but also accept that, because I realized my ancestors have been travelers. My dad doesn't like the name nomads, but somehow I feel they were kind of nomads, like even my German family, they had travel. Like my dad has 5 siblings, and all of them were born in different places, because back then, in the time after the Second World War, his parents had to move to follow the job of my grandfather. So they actually moved around Europe so much, so many times. And not just that, I think, like that's the base there. And then my Ecuadorian family has the Chinese ancestors that actually traveled from China to Ecuador. So that was one of the things that the moment I left Germany, and that was about 1.5 years ago, the moment I really embraced my nomadic lifestyle, let go of a lot of things. I'm working my way to minimalism. I know I'm not perfect yet, or I'm not in the perfect minimalism yet, but I am getting rid of more and more things and trying to own less and less things, because to me it just feels good. And I think that's my Asian heritage, or maybe it's just my own true self, my own soul, that just feels better not having too much, not owning too many things. It just feels better for me to travel. And the moment I started traveling, I felt so grounded and within myself. And I'm not saying that all the multicultural people have to travel, but I think that you are going to get this feeling of belonging, of being grounded, of standing strong on your 2 feet in your own power, once you embrace those things. On one hand, the ancestors and everybody that stands behind you, that has walked this planet for you, and on the other hand, embrace all the gifts that you bring to this world, that your soul brought to this world. So these are the things that I want to take you on this journey. I want to take you on this podcast, and also create a community for all of us, because again, I believe that we are all here to do something good, and I want to inspire you to find your own inner truth, and for you to feel good, because I feel that the more people get together and find their own inner peace, the more peace we're going to create on this planet. So yeah, long story short, thank you very much for tuning in again. I can't wait until our next session. And for now, thank you very much. Oh, fun fact at the end, the servus I use every time when I say hello. It's basically something that they say in Bavaria and Munich, Germany. And I've decided to use that because, at least for now, Munich has been the longest place I've stayed, and that's how the people there greet themselves and say goodbye. So, as I said in the beginning, servus to say hello. I'm saying servus to say goodbye. Have a nice time whenever you're listening to this. Have a great time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to some more inspiration here from multicultural, spiritually belonging to the stars. Talk to you soon. Servus!